Theresa Marcoux and Mark Harnish were both graduates of East Longmeadow High School in East Longmeadow, Massachusetts. 18-year-old Theresa loved to laugh and always had a smile on her face. 20-year-old Mark, on the other hand, had a more reserved personality, but was very courteous. In 1978, Theresa was working as a clerk in the pet department of a local hardware store, and Mark was employed at a car repair shop. Mark and Theresa were last seen alive shortly after midnight on November 19, 1978, when they left a friend's party together. Roughly 9 hours later, at 9:30 a.m., a West Springfield Police Department officer was out on patrol when he saw a green 1967 Dodge pickup truck parked in a rest area along Route 5 in West Springfield. He noticed that the driver's side window of the truck had been damaged. When he got closer, he saw that there was blood in and around the vehicle. As he further inspected the scene, he discovered 2 bodies just over a nearby guardrail. The truck belonged to Mark Harnish, and it was his and Theresa Marcoux's bodies that were found near it. Mark and Theresa had both been shot multiple times. Police believed they had been killed inside of Mark's truck, and then their bodies had been moved. Spent projectiles found inside the truck and during the autopsies were examined and found to have all been fired from the same unknown firearm, which was capable of firing .38 caliber ammunition. The medical examiner placed Mark and Theresa's times of death in the early morning hours of the 19th. A witness who lived near the crime scene reported hearing gunshots around 4 a.m. Police did find what would prove to be a critical clue: a bloody fingerprint on the passenger side vent window of the truck. It did not belong to either Mark or Theresa. Over the years, as the investigation went on, this fingerprint was manually compared to over 70,000 sets of fingerprints on file with various law enforcement agencies, and later run through the Massachusetts Automated Fingerprint Identification System. No match was found. In the fall of 2024, the Hampton District Attorney's Office was contacted by an individual who was able to give them the name of someone they believed had been involved in Mark and Theresa's murders. They had gotten the name from a friend who had since passed away. Investigators learned that the individual the tipster had named had provided his fingerprints when he had applied for a taxicab license in 2000. When they compared those fingerprints to the one found at the crime scene, they found a match to his left thumbprint. This individual was living in Springfield, Massachusetts at the time of the murders, and was also a licensed gun owner who had purchased a Colt handgun just 1 month before Theresa and Mark were killed. He did not have a significant criminal record. This evidence led to a 2-count murder complaint and arrest warrant being issued by the Springfield District Court on October 29, 2024. The following day, 71-year-old Timothy Scott Jolie was arrested at his home in Clearwater, Florida. On November 5th, he appeared before a circuit judge in Pinellas County, Florida, and waived extradition. He is expected to be returned to Massachusetts in the next few weeks to face the murder charges. Theresa and Mark's parents have all passed away, but other members of their families were present at the press conference, announcing Jolie's arrest. "52-year-old Ruth Buchanan of Forest City, North Carolina, loved her husband and their 2 children. She enjoyed square dancing and always found ways to give back to her community. On December 29, 1989, Ruth went shopping with a friend to take advantage of the after-Christmas sales at some department stores in the city of Charlotte. Ruth was going to Florida to celebrate New Year's, so she wanted to pick up a few new pieces of clothing for the vacation. Ruth and her friend crossed the street at the intersection of 5th and North Tryon Streets. While they were in the intersection, A car going approximately 45 miles an hour ran the red light and struck Ruth. She was thrown 10 feet into the air and landed on the other side of the intersection. The driver did not stop. Instead of stopping to help Ruth, he fled the scene. Ruth was rushed to Charlotte Memorial Hospital, but died there as a result of her injuries the following afternoon. Luckily for police, there were numerous witnesses to the hit and run who were able to provide a description of the car as well as its license plate number. Unfortunately, the car turned out to be stolen. It had been taken from the lot of a car dealership. On January 1st, 1990, police responded to a call about a suspicious car at a Comfort Inn in the 4400 block of South Tryon Street. The dark blue 1990 Mitsubishi Galant fit the description of the car used in the hit and run, and had the license plate number witnesses had reported. The car had extensive damage consistent with hitting a pedestrian. Forensic examination would confirm that this was the car that had struck Ruth. The car was processed for evidence, but it would be over 30 years before a clue collected from it would help solve the case. In early 2022, Crime Stoppers received an anonymous tip. The caller identified a man they believed to have been involved in the hit and run. Ultimately, investigators determined that the man named in the tip had not been the driver. However, it did bring Ruth's case to their attention. It had not been recently revisited because the department's electronic reporting system did not cover cases as old as Ruth's. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department Crime Lab then went through all of the evidence that had been preserved from the car after it was found at the Comfort Inn. One of the preserved items was a marijuana joint, which they believed they could extract DNA from. They successfully did so and found a match in the criminal database. The DNA belonged to a man named Herbert Stanback. However, records showed that he had been incarcerated at the time Ruth was killed, at a facility called Charlotte Correctional, which no longer exists. At the time his DNA was found on the joint, he was incarcerated at Scotland Correctional Institution in Laurinburg, North Carolina, for an unrelated crime. Investigators went to speak with him there on 2 separate occasions. During the first visit, Stanback asked for time to think before he spoke to the detective. On the second visit, on March 20th, 2024, he made a full confession. Stanback said that he had been too afraid to stop when he hit Ruth. He saw in the paper that she had died and assumed that police would find and arrest him soon. Even as decades passed, he knew that the crime would eventually catch up to him. When he struck and killed Ruth in 1989, Stanback had actually been on a work release program at Charlotte Correctional, leaving in the morning to go to work and returning to the correctional facility at night. He was employed at a hotel just a few blocks from the crime scene. In June of 2024, Stanback was transported to the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office and formally charged in Ruth's case. He later pled guilty to felony hit and run, resulting in serious injury or death, and was sentenced to 2 years in prison, to be served concurrently with a previous sentence. Susan Wolfe was a free spirit with a bubbly personality. She was a natural caretaker who loved helping and taking care of others. She had 2 younger brothers and was like a second mother to them, caring for them and playing with them. As an adult, Susan was working hard to make caretaking her career. She was taking classes and working at the Austin State Hospital in hopes of getting accepted into the nursing program at the University of Texas in Austin. On January 9th, 1980, 4 days before Susan's 26th birthday, she went to the university and was accepted into a work-study program that would help her eventually get her nursing degree. Later that night, Susan was walking to a friend's house because her own home was being fumigated. Susan was not a very materialistic person, to the point that she did not own a car, so she walked or biked everywhere. Around 10 p.m., just a block away from her home, she was abducted. A witness saw a car stop and the driver exit the vehicle. He put Susan in what the witness described as a bear hug, threw a jacket over her head, and forced her into the vehicle. There was a passenger in the car, but the witness could not see what they were doing during the abduction. The witness was confident in his identification of the car as a maroon 1970 Dodge Polara because he had worked repairing cars. The following morning, Susan's body was found in an alley off of East 17th Street. She had been killed by a single gunshot to the head. The medical examiner also found evidence of ligature strangulation and sexual assault. Within the first year of their investigation, the Austin Police Department developed at least 40 persons of interest and interviewed 6 suspects. They investigated individuals who drove the type of car used in Susan's abduction and placed the witness to the abduction under hypnosis, in hopes of getting more details. However, it would be decades before their efforts paid off. In April of 2023, detectives from the Austin Police Department Cold Case Unit submitted evidence related to Susan's sexual assault to the Texas Department of Public Safety Crime Laboratory. By the following February, the lab had developed an STR profile and eliminated the 6 suspects that had been identified early on in the investigation. When the sample was run through the combined DNA index system, a partial match was found to an inmate in Massachusetts. Further testing would be required to confirm that this individual's DNA was a match to that found at the crime scene. The Travis County District Court issued a warrant to obtain a direct DNA sample from this individual in June of 2024. Detectives traveled to Massachusetts to execute the warrant and obtain the DNA sample. When they did so, they were able to briefly interview the inmate, who did acknowledge that he was in Austin and San Antonio around the time of Susan's murder. When he was told about the DNA, he invoked his right to counsel. Testing of the direct DNA sample showed that the inmate was a match to the DNA from Susan's case. Based on this evidence, as well as the rest of the findings of the investigation, the Austin Municipal Court issued an arrest warrant charging Deck Brewer Jr. with the murder of Susan Wolfe on August 14, 2024. 78-year-old Brewer's sentence in Massachusetts did not end until August 28th, so he would not be extradited to Texas until he completed serving it. The crime he was serving the sentence for has not been released, although he was incarcerated in the Massachusetts Treatment Center, a medium-security prison for male sex offenders and individuals who have been civilly committed because they are considered to be sexually dangerous. Susan's younger brother Charles was 10 years younger than her, and just a junior in high school when she was killed. He had to take 6 months off of school following her murder to deal with his grief. During that time, he rode around town on his bicycle, distributing flyers and doing whatever he could to ask for the public's help in the investigation. Susan's death was an open wound for him and the rest of Susan's family that they were not sure would ever heal. They held on to hope that her case would one day be solved, but after more than 40 years, Charles had started to let go of that dream. He was therefore shocked and overjoyed when he saw on the news that an arrest had been made in his sister's case. He was also somewhat upset that the police had not contacted him with the news prior to it being made public. Susan's parents passed away without learning who took their daughter from them, and Charles had contacted the Austin Police Department in 2019 after his mother died to be sure he was the point of contact for any updates in the case. The department has since been in contact with him. The Austin Police Department is still hoping to identify the passenger in the car during Susan's abduction. They are asking that any member of the public with information come forward.